All right, for this next video, we're going to continue updating John's Form 1040 for 2022, but now we are going to input the information related to the sale of a personal use item where John received a Form 1099-K. So we've got the 2022 TurboTax online version in front of us here, and we've also got some slides here that we'll look at that'll contain the fact pattern. So what we're going to cover in this video, we're reporting the Form 1099-K information, but it wasn't related to the sale of products or services for a trade or business, right? So John is not receiving this because he's operating a separate trade or business. He just sold something that was personal use, but he got a 1099 anyway, all right? And so what to do when you get the 1099 and the sale of that personal use item resulted in a gain. Now, the reason why I'm being precise about the gain is because the IRS guidance on this says that losses should be reported differently. Okay, and so the first video is going to address the gain reporting, and then the second one will be a sample fact pattern where John sold something at a loss. So ultimately, the sale of personal use items are going to be reported on Form 8949 in Schedule D. And then we'll also take a quick look at the IRS fact sheet 2022-41. This was posted last year. And the reason why this is important is because this is where the IRS has provided some guidance on these issues and how to report the items on your return. All right, so if we go to the fact pattern here, we have John, taxpayer, and again, this is a carryover from the previous videos. So we have John, taxpayer, he's the sales agent. We've already reported his W-2. We've reported some interest income, and we reported his student loan interest. Now, John also had a part-time e-commerce store, and so we've reported those items on his Schedule C, right? And we've also updated Schedule SE, Schedules 1 and 2. So the part that we're focusing in on now is the sale of this personal use item. So on May 1st, 2022, John had a yard sale, and he sold a used TV. So he had a TV in his living room that he was using for personal use. He sold it on a yard sale for $1,200. Now, he bought the TV last year, so he's had it less than a year, right? Bought it in November for $1,100. So he actually made some money on it, right? He had a $100 gain on the sale of the TV. So maybe he had a Thanksgiving Day sale where he got a really cheap or a good discount. And so when he resold it, he actually made some money, right? Rare, but it does happen. Now, the buyer transferred money to John via Venmo, right? He didn't have the cash, so he's like, I'll just transfer the money via Venmo. John said, that's fine. Well, John got a 1099-K from Venmo for the $1,200 gross transaction amount. And so now he's trying to figure out how to report all this on his return. So under the tax rules, although, and this is what bothers a lot of people, but this is the way the tax law works, this is a sale of a personal use item for a gain. It's still taxable, right? So John's gain is a taxable capital gain. It has to be reported on his return. All right, so how does he go about reporting this? Okay, so let's look at the tax return, and we'll start inputting some of this information. So if we start on the left-hand side here in the federal section, we're looking at wages and income. So if we drill down to wages and income, and let's get the 1099-K information imported first. So you scroll down here, there's a number of drop-down items, and if we scroll down to other common income, we have tax refunds, 1099, NEC, miscellaneous, and K, right? So we're going to add a 1099-K. All right, so I'm going to revisit this section. Now, the reason why we're revisiting this is because in the previous videos, we've already added a 1099-K from PayPal, but that was for John's trader business, his actual ordinary trader business. The 1099-K we're inputting now from Venmo, these are just his personal transactions. So we got to enter a separate one and have it directed to a separate part of the tax return. So let's add our 1099-K. I'm going to just type it in myself. So the 1099-K you get in front of you, you've got a couple options here, right? So the occasional income, hobby, personal sales items, frequent income might be the self-employment income, right? That was what we had in the previous videos for John's business. Real estate rentals, right? So if you have a real estate property and your tenant pays you in rent, or pays you, sorry, they'll pay you rent, obviously, but if they pay you via a payment card transaction platform, then you might get a 1099-K for those rental property receipts. In our case here, this is a personal sale item, right? So we got a personal sale item. Go ahead and click continue, and then input information that you'll see on the 1099-K. So just key all this information in as you see it on the 1099-K. Obviously, this is not real information, right? Because it's Venmo, and this is clearly not their tax ID number. Okay, so the gross amount of payment card transactions, that was the $1,200 amount, right? So he's got $1,200, and there was no federal tax withholding, and he doesn't have any other state information, all right? So $1,200, go ahead and click through, continue. Now, here's what's very important, right? It says, we've added your personal item sales, but you'll need to enter additional information in other sections. So why is that? Well, all they've really done now is log the gross sale proceeds of the item, but we haven't told them any details as to what we sold, what the dates were on when we bought it, when we sold it, and what our cost basis is, right? The cost basis is really important, right? What did we pay for it? Because we don't want to record the whole $1,200 as income. So what's nice here about TurboTax is they do give us some Q&A information and some tutorials on how to kind of fix this. What they have here is say, okay, well, I have a personal sale item. What do I need to do next? So we click continue through this screen, then select done. And then what it wants us to do is go to the income landing table and look to the investment topics, stocks, cryptocurrency, mutual funds, bonds, and other. And so when we're in this section, this is where we start to add the information on the cost basis for the personal item. All right, so if we click continue here, I'm going to click done out of this section. And then we're going to scroll down as it asks us to the investments and savings sections, right? So we're going to drill down on this. And then it asks us to click on this section here, right? So stocks, crypto, mutual funds, bonds, and other. So we're going to drive down on this menu here. And what we'll see here now is we have this prompt. You'll need to enter or review each personal item sale separately. Okay? And here's our Venmo piece, right? So we have Venmo. It's telling us we've got to review this. So we're going to go ahead and review. And this is where we're going to enter that additional information. So I'm going to close this help screen because we found where we need to be. So this is what type of investment, right? This is a personal use item, okay? So it gives you a bunch of other, items up here that it possibly could be, which it could be, right? Again, like cryptocurrency. For Coinbase, they don't have to issue the actual 1099-Bs yet, so they're still issuing 1099-Ks. So you could get a 1099-K for cryptocurrency reason, and maybe that would be applicable here. But again, this is just personal use item, personal item, so we can leave that as is. Now, how do we receive this item? Well, we bought it, right? So John purchased it. The description is a television. And when did he purchase this investment? The purchase date, let's go back to our slides here, make sure we get this right. So he sold it on May 1st, bought it on November 22nd, right? Okay, so he bought it on November 22nd, 2021, and then the next year, just a few months later, he sold it May 1st, 2022. Okay? Now the proceeds should match the 1099-K, right? I mean, he sold it for $1,200, so that's what was reported on the 1099-K. So it goes ahead and enters $1,200 just so that all matches. Then the amount paid is his cost basis, right? So what did he pay for the item? It was $1,100. All right, so all that's entered. Go ahead and click continue. It asks us for an additional prompt here. Let us know if any of these situations apply. Sales expenses not included in the proceeds. No, so none of these apply. Go ahead and close that out. Okay, and so here we have our Venmo sales, TV, date sold, May 1st. It's going to be short term, right, because the holding period was under a year. Proceeds $1,200, cost basis, and there's our gain. All right, there's our $100 capital gain. So if I click through further here, confirm, and we'll go take a look at, oh, it's going to give us some more background on how they calculated this, or maybe not. Okay, so let's look at how the return came out. So if we go to Tax Tools, go into the Print Center, and then I'm going to preview the return. Want to make sure that everything's flowing there as it should be. Okay. All right, so we've got John's return here is 1040. All of this stuff, it remains relatively the same from the prior videos. But what's should be different here is we have a Form 8949 and a Schedule D. There's the Schedule C, and there's our Schedule D. So Schedule D is kind of the summary page of the capital gains or losses. If we scroll down a bit here, there's the 8949. Okay, so there's the 8949. Short-term transactions not reported on 1099-B, right? And that's correct, right? It was a 1099, but it's a 1099-K, right? So it's appropriate to have box C checked there. So you have the TV, date acquired, date sold, proceeds, costs or other basis. No adjustment codes here, and we just have a $100 gain. And then the $100 gain flows up here to Schedule D, right? So there we got Schedule D. The proceeds cost $100 short term. Okay. All right. So that's covers it for this video. Next one, we will be looking at how to report these 1099-K transactions for personal use items when you have a loss. All right. So what happens when you take a loss? And that's where it'll get a little tricky because TurboTax and the IRS guidance actually looks a little different. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, obviously, feel free to leave me a comment below, and I'll see you on the next video.